Hi everyone, I hope you're all keeping well. The main aim of these videos is to try and basically get a sense of continuity to continue on with our spreadsheets course. Even though we're not physically present in the centre, I'm hoping that you'll all be able to watch these videos and get a sense of exactly what it is that we're doing and be able to continue the work as well. I'm going to supplement this video material with notes, which I'm going to email on to all of you, as well as worksheets and so on and so forth. And as well as the briefs then as well. I'll be able to actually send you on the briefs. Remember, we spoke about the briefs for the assessments for level 3, so I'll be able to send everything on to you via email, and then this video material will then supplement and support your learning and your journey through learning how to use Excel. So hopefully you'll find them useful. For this video, I'm going to make the first video short because I'm just going to briefly go back over what Microsoft Excel is, why we might use it, and the application for it in the real world. So to recall, Microsoft Excel is a spreadsheet application. And a spreadsheet application or a spreadsheet program is simply a program that keeps track of numbers, primarily numbers. We use it for crunching numbers. We can use it for doing other things as well. We can use it for keeping track of text and storing text as well. But its primary goal is to help us crunch numbers. Now, by crunching numbers, I mean think of the average use. Let's say you might have you might want to keep track of budgets for incoming and outgoing for a house or for a small business. You might want to crunch the numbers. If you were saving for something, you might want to keep track of what you're saving every week, and then maybe set a limit or a goal to have a certain amount saved every week. You might want to keep track of hours, working hours that you work in a week, or a manager may want to keep track of the number of hours that people in an organization work. And you can also factor that in then with things like rate of pay. Excel will be able to calculate based on what the rate of pay is, how much money somebody is due based on the number of hours that they've worked. So we can use it for kind of rostering and scheduling as well. So it's a very, very powerful program, very flexible program, and a relatively easy program to use as well. Recall from our first day, when we open up Excel, I've opened up Excel here, we place a shortcut to it down on the taskbar, and we see the start screen. We see the start screen, which will be familiar to you if you've used any recent version of Microsoft Office applications like Word, or if you have used Access or PowerPoint. You're going to see a very similar screen. Down along the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to see a number of options, menu options. And then here in the main center of the screen, we're going to see, it's going to tell us good morning. And if you're signed into Office, it's going to probably say your name here. And then it's going to give you the option to create a number of what are known as templates. Now, we're going to be staying away from templates for this level 3 course. But just to make you aware that a template is simply a pre-existing file with a lot of the heavy lifting and design done, and maybe some calculation stuff built in there as well, so that you don't have to design everything from the scratch. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Think of it like if you were using a template for Microsoft Word, you might have a business letter template, or you might have a calendar template where a lot of the design and the as I say, the heavy lifting of the work is done for you, and you just need to kind of plug in your own details. Excel is exactly the same. It has its own templates built in. We're not going to be looking at those. We're just going to be looking at a blank workbook. And we have a number of other options here as well, like opening a workbook and saving and printing. We'll get to those in due course. Down here, you won't see any files on my screen here, but recently opened files would appear down here. So any file that I would have saved previously in Excel will appear here, and then other ones will continue to appear, and it's chronologically listed, which means that the most recently opened and saved file will appear at the top, and then other ones will start to get bumped down off the list. If the file that you want isn't there, we can click on the open button to actually get to it. We'll ignore pinned and shared with me now. We don't really need to worry about those. And we have a number of other options down here, account, feedback, and options, which we'll come back to at a later stage. So this is the home section of the start screen. If you click on new, you're going to see something very similar. You're going to see an even wider array of templates, and the templates are split into categories as well, like business and so on and so forth. But blank workbook is what we're going to be working with all the time. If I click on open, I'll be given a list of options for opening a file, and the main location that we're going to be opening files from and saving files to is going to be our local computer. When I say local, I mean the computer sitting in front of you, because it's local to you. So other locations down here, that's really where we're interested in here. We're interested in this PC.
There are cloud locations. We'll talk about cloud storage. I'll kind of integrate it with what we're doing because it's important to know about it and very useful to know about it in a later lesson. But for now, we'll just ignore the fact that we do have a cloud drive storage option up here. This is my cloud drive linked to my OneDrive, my Microsoft OneDrive account. But down here is where we're really going to be working most of the time. So again, recently opened files would, my recently opened files list is clear, but recently opened files would appear here, much the same way that they would appear out here. But in the open screen, if you can see the file, or if your file has gotten bumped off the bottom of the list, we can click on the Browse button, and what's known as a dialog box. We're going to see a lot of these during our journey through Excel. You'll see them a lot in Microsoft Office in general. A dialog box is simply a box which is displayed on the screen, and it's the computer having a dialogue with us. It's asking us what we want to do. In this case specifically, it's asking us what the file that we want to open is and where is it, where on the computer is it. So I'll cancel that there for now. We have a number of other options here which are grayed out at the moment because I have no file opened. So for instance, I can't click on info or save as or print because I don't have any file open on which I can get info or which I can save or print. So that's why these are grayed out at the moment. That's just to give you an idea of the start screen, the home screen that you'll see when you start Microsoft Excel. For now, I'm going to go back to the new screen and I'm going to select blank workbook. And this is going to produce the following screen, which hopefully you remember from our initial classes. So some terminology, which I'm giving you in the notes as well. Every new file that's created in Microsoft Excel is referred to as a workbook. Okay? If you were working in Microsoft Word, every new document would simply be referred to as a document. But in Excel, we refer to new files or documents as a workbook. Now, the terms are really interchangeable, to be honest. If I say file, what I really mean is the workbook. That's just the jargon, the terminology that's used to describe a file or a document in Microsoft Excel. And don't forget, a file is something that we're going to end up actually saving onto the computer. So this is a workbook. And every workbook has to contain at least what's known as one worksheet. If you don't have a worksheet, you have no space in which to enter information. So this is the workbook in Excel, and we always have at least one worksheet. In previous versions of Excel, they used to give you 3 sheets, but now they only give you 1 sheet, but you can easily add more, and we'll see how to do that. So the aim of this video is to just basically go back over the user interface of Microsoft Excel and to try and, because it's going to probably have been a few weeks since you've looked at it unless you have it at home. So I just want to jog everybody's memory and make you aware of the things that we're looking at in Microsoft Excel when we open it up and when we create a new workbook. Up here we have the quick access toolbar, which is a number of 4 or 5 different options commonly used operations or functions in Excel which we can use. We have a save button here, we have an undo button, we have a redo button, and we also have a drop down arrow which allows us to customize this quick access toolbar. If I left click on the down arrow, you can see that there is a tick beside the operations which are currently on that quick access toolbar. But I could turn on another one. For instance, I could turn on print preview and print, and now an extra icon has been placed on the quick access toolbar. Or I could turn on, let's say, the email one, which would allow me to quickly email a workbook to somebody. So you can turn off and turn on various different tools which are enabled or which will appear on the quick access toolbar. I'm going to turn off email and I'm going to turn off print preview and print. And I'm just going to leave the default ones of save, undo and redo turned on. Underneath that then we have what's known as, they used to be called menus in the old style terminology, but they're now referred to as tabs. So we have a home tab, an insert tab, a page layout tab, and so on and so forth. And underneath each tab we have this long horizontal bar which stretches the width of the screen and the width of the application. And this bar is called the ribbon toolbar. And you'll notice that when you click on a tab, the contents of the ribbon toolbar changes to reflect the tab that you're on. The Home tab contains the most commonly used files, the most commonly used tools or functions that you'll use an awful lot of the time in the Home tab. So we're going to be spending an awful lot of our time on the Home tab. And we can see that we're on the Home tab because of the thick green border underneath the Home text. If I left click once on Insert, However, I'm taken to a different section of the ribbon toolbar. The ribbon toolbar changes to reflect tools that are connected to things that I can insert in my workbook or in my worksheet. So I can insert pictures and graphs and charts and icons and all sorts of other things as well. Most of which we won't be looking at. We will be looking at some of them. But basically, when you want to insert something, you would click on the Insert tab and you're given access to these tools as well. And similarly, all the way along for each other tab. When we left click once on each tab, the contents of that ribbon toolbar changes to reflect the tools underneath that tab. If I go back to Home, you'll see that each tab, as we say, has a number of different tools, and each grouping of those tools is called a group. So have a look here where I'm now with the mouse. Each group is separated by this vertical line, long vertical line, and each group is given a name, and the name is always down in the center bottom of each group. So tools are grouped together logically related to what they actually do. So we have a clipboard group when it comes to getting stuff from the clipboard that we've copied or cut, and we'll be looking at that shortly. We have a font group, so when we're changing the style or text or color of our font, all of the tools up there for doing that are in our font group. And so on and so forth all the way across. We have an alignment group and a number group, and each tab has its own specific groups. And the thinking behind groups is that you want to group together tools that are logically related or that do something very thematically or functionally similar. On the page layout group tab, we have a themes group and a page setup group, and so on and so forth. So it's not essential, but it is handy to know this terminology, because if I say go to the data tab and left click on the sort tool in the sort and filter group, that's a lot of jargon there between tabs and groups and tools and so on and so forth. So it is useful to have some of that terminology and jargon down. So these are our tabs up here, and this is our ribbon toolbar, and the ribbon toolbar under each tab is split into what are known as groups or groups of tools. In the bottom right hand corner of each group, you'll see a little launcher button, which is like an arrow pointing diagonally up and down to the left and right. And if I left click once on any of these, what will happen is a dialog box will open up giving me additional options for that group, because we only have a limited number of space or amount of space on the screen, so Excel can't possibly fit all of the tools for each group on screen. So what it does is it puts the more common ones out here on the toolbar, and then when you want to drill down and use some of the more advanced or maybe some of the less commonly used ones, we have to open up the launcher button. We have to click on the launcher button to open up the options, the additional options for that group. And these open in a dialog box. We've already seen a dialog box at the start there. I'm going to click on the X just to close it down, because we're not going to be looking at any of those just yet. But just to make you aware of what this little button does, it gives you options to, or rather access to additional options for each group. Up here we have the name of the document at the moment. It's not saved. This document exists only in memory, so if I was to turn off the computer, I would lose this document or this workbook. But Excel still has to refer to it as something, so it calls it Book 1. That's simply a default temporary name that Excel is giving to this workbook. And then we have the name of the application itself, which is simply Excel. We also have a search box up here, which will allow us to search for a piece of text within our document. We'll come back to that at a later stage. Down here, however, is where we're going to be spending most of our time, and this is essentially the backbone of Excel. This is what Excel is. Excel is essentially a large table, and a table is simply a collection of columns and rows, as we saw in our first class. And your columns are labelled A, B, C, D, and so on and so forth, and our rows are numbered 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth all the way down. Wherever a row and a column intersect, we refer to it as a cell, and it's into these cells that we type our data, either our numbers or our text. And that's the basis of Microsoft Excel. That's what it is. It's essentially a very large table, a grid, if you like, a collection of columns and rows intersecting, and at those intersection points, that's where we input our data. Just in case you're wondering how many rows and columns you have, you've got quite a few. If I hold down Control on my keyboard and press the right arrow key, I'll be taken all the way along to XFD. Now you might be wondering how many columns across is that? It's quite a few. You've only got 26 letters in the English alphabet, obviously, and we go all the way across to Z, and of course then we run out of letters. So what Excel does is it starts again at AA, AB, AC, and so on and so forth, all the way across to AZ, and then it goes BA, BB, and so on and so forth, until it reaches XFD. So off the top of my head, that's something like 65,536 columns. I'm going to go back to the first column. And in terms of rows, we have even more. If I hold the control button on my keyboard down and press my down arrow, you'll see that I'm all the way down here at the 1,048,576th row. So I'm going to hit control, press the up arrow, and go back to the very top. Clearly, we're never going to need anything even remotely close to that amount of space. So just to let you know that you do have practically an infinite amount of space in a worksheet, which is nice to know. I'm going to come back to this guy here. This is known as our formula bar. I'll come back to this shortly, and these little tools over here as well I'll come back to shortly as well. I'm going to concentrate for now just on these cells over here, and the first thing we'll do is notice that I'm moving around using my arrow keys on my keyboard, my cursor keys, my up, down, left, right, and arrow key, and these allow me to navigate around and select any cell that I want in the worksheet. Don't forget, the worksheet, this thing here, is in the workbook, okay? So I can also left click once on a cell to go from cell to cell. And a very important feature of the Excel interface is known as the name box, and the name box is up here in the top left hand corner. You can see a little tool tip. These things are known as tool tips. When you hover your mouse over something, if you're not sure what something does, just hover your mouse over it and a very helpful little box will pop up underneath it to tell you exactly what that thing is. These are called tool tips. So if I hover my mouse over this little box up here in the top left hand corner, it tells me that this is the name box. And the name box is very useful because it allows me to identify what cell I'm in or on. This is also referred to as the current active cell, because it can be difficult sometimes. If you're way over here, you have to try and kind of, okay, I'm in the S column, and then you have to try and read across here. Okay, I'm in S27. Or if you're further along again, it can be a lot more difficult to read it back and read it down. But you don't need to. All you need to do is look up at the name box. A current active cell will always be visually denoted by a thick green border around it, with this little fill handle box in the bottom right hand corner. We'll be looking at that shortly as well. But sometimes if you have borders turned on around cells, it can be difficult to see that border. So in addition, you'll be able to look up at the name box and you'll be able to see which cell that you're in. So we always identify each cell first of all by the column that it's in, and then followed by the row number that it's on. So for instance, I'm in cell G14. Now I'm in cell R29. Now I'm in cell E14, and so on and so forth. So whenever you want to know what cell you're in, just take a look up in the name box and you'll be able to see it. Down here in the bottom left hand corner, I'm just going to finish this video up now because this is just a whirlwind tour and review of what we did in our first class. But we have the name of our sheet down here called Sheet 1, and we have a little add button as well, which is the add new sheet button. We can add a new sheet at any point in time. We can add as many new sheets as we want to a workbook. Over here we have a number of different what are known as views. We can choose to view our Excel worksheet in a number of different ways, a variety of different ways. Most of the time we're going to be stuck on this one here, and it's called normal view, but we will be looking into some of the other views as well. We also have a zoom slide rule as well, which we can use to zoom in and out. I'm clicking and dragging, left clicking and dragging this little slide rule here, and I can also click the plus button to zoom in by 10% at a time, and the minus button to zoom out by 10% at a time. I'm going to zoom back into the default, which is 100%. And then finally we have our scroll bars here, because sometimes we will need to go down and up or across left and right. So I can scroll across left and right by clicking and dragging this scroll bar here, or clicking and dragging this scroll bar here to go up and down. And you've also got the little arrows here as well to do scrolling for left and right and up and down, or scrolling with the mouse wheel as well. I'm pulling the mouse wheel away from me and I'm scrolling down, and I'm pushing the mouse wheel down towards the window. Sorry, I'm pulling the mouse wheel towards me, should I say, and I'm scrolling down, and now I'm pushing the mouse wheel away from me and I'm scrolling back up. So navigating around within a worksheet is quite easy. So that's just a whirlwind review tour of what we did for the first night really that we met down in Carrick. So in the next video we're going to look at actually entering data into Microsoft Excel, and we'll see how to enter data in and how to navigate around once we've entered it in, and how to manipulate that data once it's typed in. So I'll see you in the next video.